Well, joining me to talk more about the rising influence of video games on children and young adults is Mikael Jakobsson. He's a research scientist at MIT's Comparative Media Studies department and is also research coordinator for the MIT Game Lab. Welcome, Mikael.
Thank you, Rachelle.
So let's start with the industry as a whole. With so much crossover between these consoles, handheld devices and mobile games, how is this shaping competition in the gaming industry?
Well, what we've seen with the increase of mobile games is that it's getting harder to charge the prices that console developers used to charge for their games, and the prices for developing these games also go up for each generation of consoles. So that has shaken up the monetization structures for those games somewhat.
And we've also seen in the spotlight that after the deadly school shooting in Parkland, Florida, President Trump vowed to do something about the violence in video games and films and the influence that they have on young people's behavior. But what's your take on that correlation?
Well, as far as science have been able to see, there is no correlation whatsoever between consuming violence in video games and actually performing violent acts. So that just doesn't exist. But on the other hand, there is always a connection between the kind of media we consume and how we consume it and society at large. So in a violent society, we will also tell stories and create and share experiences that are violent in some sense. So that's not saying that there isn't a connection. The connection isn't just the kind of games are creating killing machines kind of connection.
So not any sort of direct correlation?
No, there's just been so many studies and nothing has proven that connection exists whatsoever.
Now, let's also look at some of the increasing calls for more consumer protection when it comes to these in-game purchases. So recently, the Entertainment Software Rating Board, which is a non-profit that assigns age and content ratings, said it would require any physical video game sold with in-game purchases to be labeled as such. How do you think that's going to affect sales?
I don't really think that it's going to have a big effect on sales. I think it's a sign of maturity and health within the industry that they are taking these measures to self-regulate, and as long as that leads to no regulations from state or the government side, then I don't think there will be a big effect on the market.
So what do you consider some of the major challenges that the gaming industry might be facing right now?
There's a couple. One of them is, of course, dealing with these kinds of what we call in-game or in-app purchases that can lead to behaviors that have people losing a lot of money without really realizing it. So that's one of the challenges that have to be dealt with, and I think the industry can deal with it themselves. Another one, I think, is to deal with what we call toxic masculinity within the gaming community. We do see that there are connections between young men falling astray in terms of social networks and so on, and these men also gathering together in communities where there aren't a lot of positive role models, there isn't a lot of diversity, and there aren't just a lot of people that can catch young men who are exhibiting different kind of problematic behaviors.
And Mikael, as we look ahead, we know that there's been a lot of hype around augmented reality and virtual reality, but in terms of what's going to be next for the gaming industry, where do you think the focus will be?
So I think, and this has held true so far for many years, that for technological advances to have a big effect on the industry, they really have to fit into people's everyday practices around gaming. So that means they can't take over your whole apartment. They can't be too costly. They can't, nowadays, not be portable, I think. So I think anything that is going to change how we play games basically has to be affordable and fit in your pocket.